Counsel, you ready to proceed? You want to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Officer Jessica Amengor.
Yes, good morning. You are Ms. Jessica Amengor.
Amengor.
Welcome. Come on through this to our witness stand. What I'd like you to do is remain standing for a bit. You put your things down. Thank you. Just raise your right hand as best you can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you should give in this case should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please state your full legal name for the record.
Full legal name is Jessica Amengor. Can you spell it as well?
Yes, first and last, please.
First is going to be Jessica. Last name Amengor.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. Ms. Amengor, that microphone doesn't move back or forward. It will only adjust up or down.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Counsel, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury and tell them where you're currently employed?
Good morning. My name is Officer Jessica Amengor. I work for Miramar PD in Broward County, state of Florida.
Okay. And how long have you been employed by the Miramar Police Department?
A total of 11 years. 5 years I was a community service aide, which is a non-sworn position, and then 6 years now as a sworn law enforcement officer.
And what were some of your duties as a service aide, a non-sworn officer?
So primarily respond to basic criminal investigations as well as traffic crashes, missing persons reports, lost property reports, basic thefts, and then for traffic crashes, with injuries, without injuries, and then actually I was able to get my traffic homicide certification. So any traffic crashes that responded into serious bodily injury or death, I was responding to as well.
And can you tell us about your training experience within the 6 years that you've been a sworn officer?
So 6 years, basic law enforcement, police academy, several classes including field training officer, training officers as they get hired, continued my traffic homicide investigation courses, fraud investigation, injury and death investigation, case preparation, a number of certifications that I have for professional development classes, as well as my 4-year bachelor's degree in criminal justice from FIU.
Okay. And back on October 26th of 2018, you were employed as a police officer, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And as part of your duties as a police officer, do you often conduct detail or work details?
Yes. So as a police officer, I'm allowed to work off-duty security details at various locations in the city. So if a business is having an increase in burglaries, for example, they'll pay for an officer to sit in the parking lot to prevent and deter crime. At the hospital, we're preventing services in the lobbies. Newborn abductions, for example, anything that would occur at these kind of soft targets, there is one officer standby to prevent things from happening, and then obviously anything that was transpired, call for additional resources to assist them.
And so back on October 26th of 2018, where were you working in detail?
Memorial Hospital, Miramar.
And where's that hospital located?
The emergency room is 1901 Southwest 172nd Ave.
Okay, and what city and county is that in?
City of Miramar, County of Broward.
And are you generally familiar with the area of the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you kind of give us a brief geography of the area, the main intersections and the highways?
So the hospital sits on the corner of 172nd Avenue and Pembroke Road on the southeast corner. We border with Pines on the north side. So and the ER faces Pembroke Road.
All right. And where are you sitting or where are you working when you're working your detail inside the emergency room?
So as soon as you pull into the emergency room, right there at the security desk, there's 2 entrances or 2 doors, but it goes with the same vestibule. There's one side for the pediatrics and one side for the adults. So as soon as you walk into either door, I'm sitting right in the middle at the security desk.
Okay. And so on October 26th of 2018, while you were working your shift, do you recall a time where a black male approached you?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury his general demeanor?
So I'm sitting at the ER desk, and he comes running inside to my left, so the pediatric entrance, and he's very excited, like heightened state of alert, something traumatic or something just happened. And he's like, hey, they just shot my car, they just shot my friends, like I need help, can you come help me. And that was the initial interaction.
And based on his statement, how do you proceed?
So as soon as I walk out the ER and I see the vehicle had multiple bullet holes on the side, I immediately radio in for additional resources because that's beyond my scope of I can handle by myself. And then asking, hey, I need additional officers, as soon as possible, urgently to respond to the hospital. I have a vehicle that's been involved in the shooting. I can see the multiple bullet holes. And then looking inside the vehicle, I can see 2 unresponsive males. So I advise I have possible dead persons as well.
Okay, so let's break that down. You're sitting at the security desk inside the ER. This male approaches you, and based on that contact, you exit the ER,
Yes.
correct? Where was that vehicle that you just described located?
So imagine I'm sitting at the desk as this, and there's door here. So he comes to this door on the left. As soon as I walk out that same door he came through, the vehicle's parked in the drive-through lane, and I can see the right side of the vehicle.
Okay, so it was immediately apparent upon you exiting the ER?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what type of vehicle was this?
It was a blue Jeep SUV.
Okay, and you said that the vehicle was riddled with bullets, if that was your statement.
We had several bullet holes on the right side.
Okay, on the right side of the vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned that there were some individuals inside. How many people occupied the vehicle at the time when you saw it?
One gentleman in the front passenger seat and one in the rear right passenger seat.
And when you approached the vehicle, was it apparent their condition?
Yes, they weren't moving.
Okay. How so were you able to, I guess, determine whether or not they were injured?
So immediately looking on the vehicle and, just the fact that there was multiple bullet holes inside, they weren't moving. If somebody was able for me to help them, they'd be in obvious pain, screaming, moaning, and there's nothing.
Did you attempt to render aid?
Yes. So I immediately, after radioing in for assistance and letting the security guard at the desk, hey, I need doctors and nurses and everything to come out to help me. Put on gloves and reached inside the front passenger seat and checked the pulse of the gentleman, the right wrist. I didn't find anything.
Okay. Upon you doing that, you mentioned that you already called. Did you call for assistance for law enforcement from Miramar Police Department?
Yes, immediately.
And then, besides your attempt to render aid, did medical personnel eventually come out and attempt to assist the victims?
Yes, definitely.
Were you present for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and were you present when they took the victims inside?
Yes, ma'am.
Ultimately? And where was the black male subject that initially approached you at this point?
So right as soon as you walk it, we park the vehicle, there's like a decent sized sidewalk area for people to, pick which either door they want to go in. There's also a park bench. So while talking to him and trying to radio in and get information where this could have occurred, suspect information, where I need, other additional resources to go, he's standing next to me in that area, and then at one point I just have him sit down because he's just so, all over the place.
Did he ultimately identify himself to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the name that he provided?
I believe it's Cortlen Henry.
Okay. And did he tell you where the circumstances surrounding how he ended up at the hospital?
So he advised he just left the studio with his friends in Fort Lauderdale, and that he wasn't familiar with the area, but he had just gotten off a highway because they're staying at a home somewhere near the hospital. After he got off the highway, he was stopped at a light, and then the car, he couldn't tell me exactly what kind of car it was, just started shooting at his vehicle. So he multiple times reenacting a story. He's going like this because he's saying that he had to duck down in the driver's seat because he was driving to avoid being hit.
And again, along those lines, you said that it was immediately apparent as to the other victims inside the vehicle. Were you able to observe any injuries to Cortlen Henry?
No.
Were you able to observe any blood?
No. I actually told him several times that he was lucky because for that many bullet holes, I was surprised he didn't get hit.
And you had worked a detail at Miramar Hospital prior to October 26, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you generally familiar with their video surveillance system?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had a chance prior to today to review the video surveillance?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, permission to approach?
You may.
I'm showing opposing counsel what's been pre-marked as States A for identification. Officer, do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recognize it?
My initials are on the top there.
And is it a fair and accurate depiction of the events that occurred back on October 26th of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Any alterations or deletions based on your memory?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves into evidence what is pre-marked as States A as States 1.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. It will be admitted. Ladies and gentlemen, as you heard, this Video has been accepted into evidence. Witnesses may testify about or refer to this or any other item of evidence during the remainder of the trial. This and all other items of evidence that are received as evidence will be available to you for your examination during your deliberations at the end of the trial.
Your Honor, permission to publish?
You may publish. Need the lights dim, Counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excuse me. Can you see? Can you tilt the screen? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hold on one minute.
And officer, before I play the video, I see that there are two angles present. The Pembroke West entrance, can you tell the jury, orient us to where that view would be?
So yes, so the hospital sits on the southeast corner of Pembroke Road and 162nd Avenue. So the hospital has multiple entrances to get to the property. There's an ER building on the north side and a medical office building on the south side. So this entrance that you're seeing now is actually facing Pembroke Road. You would go south to go to the ER from Pembroke.
I'm publishing now, Pembroke West entrance. And officer, so we don't have to go through the entire video, did you recognize the vehicle that just entered the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that the vehicle that you observed, that you testified to earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
Going to publish the outside ER entrance. What are we seeing on the screen right now?
So this is the sidewalk portion I was telling you about. Immediately on the bottom left corner of the screen, with these those white dashes, that's where the cars drive through. Those dashes are for them to see pedestrians just walking across into the ER. Then there's a sidewalk portion, and these are the two doors of the ER. The left door on the left side of the video is the ER adult entrance, and the right is the pediatric entrance, but it's one big area. And then in the middle is the park bench. Right behind that glass is a security desk. I'm sitting in the middle of both of those doors.
And that subject that we see in the video,
That's the gentleman that approached me.
continuing to publish. I'm going to pause the video at 4:36 and 11 seconds. We see a second individual in the video frame. Can you recognize that person?
Yeah, that's me.
Publishing, continue. I'm going to pause the video at 4:36:51. Is this the where you indicated to us earlier that you had him sit down, Cortlen Henry.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we can't see the Jeep in the video frame, is that correct?
Yes.
The Jeep would be located at the bottom left, my left of the
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed that you approached and you were talking into something. What was that?
That's my patrol radio.
Okay. Was that your how you were able to request assistance?
Yes, ma'am.
Continuing to publish.
And that's me telling security guard I need medical staff. Put envelopes that check for purples.
And I see you're continuing to talk to that subject that you identified as Cortlen Henry.
Yes, ma'am.
And I see at this point, it looks like some other officers are responding.
Yes, ma'am.
Are those officers at the Miramar Police Department as well?
Yes, ma'am. That's going to be Officer Natasha Torres. And that's going to be Officer Hession.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Can we-
Sure.
Now, officer, I noticed that you continue to speak with Cortlen Henry throughout the duration of the video. Why is it important that you were speaking with him?
So, trying to establish where this actually occurred. I'm asking him, he told me the story, said he's not familiar with the area. So, every time you see him going like this, he's finishing the story, but every time I'm asking him, and trying to ask him if he recognizes certain landmarks, and obviously, I've been working for the city for a while, so I'm very familiar with geography. There's several highways that go through the city. So I'm asking him specifically, asking him about these landmarks so he can narrow down which highway he actually came off of.
And was that information ultimately information that was conveyed to you, conveyed to the other Miramar police officers?
Yes. So that particular night, the way our schedule works, it's an overlap of both of our overnight shifts. So at that point, you have about approximately anywhere from 15 to 20 officers working the road. So because of that nature of the call, the entire city would respond to various job duties. So several would come to the actual hospital to work that crime scene, and as well as the primary officer to take over the investigation and detectives. And you have everybody else canvassing for evidence. So we have east to west, State Road 7, University, there's an exit from the turnpike. There's an exit for the turnpike on Red Road, and then I-75 US 27. So everybody that wouldn't be at the hospital would be canvassing those intersections of major highways to see if they could find shell casings that would be evidentiary of where this occurred.
Okay. And did you remain on scene even after the video ended, the duration of the video, where other police officers arrived?
Yes. So my detail work is until 6 a.m. and approximately this happened at 4 and change. So I'll be there until 6.
Were you charged with any other investigative duties?
No.
So this ends your involvement in the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Any cross?
Yes. May I?
You may.
Officer, when this person you've identified as Mr. Henry came in, did you notice that he was wearing a black hoodie?
Yes, sir.
And I assume that whatever he said would be documented in your report. Is that correct?
What it said initially, yes.
and the questions that you asked him, you would document his responses if he said anything, correct?
Whatever you responded to, I would put out evidentiary-wise, I put it on the radio, but I did not write a complete report of our entire dialogue, no.
You did not.
Our entire dialogue, no.
You did not document the location or streets, signs in your report?
I didn't know exactly where this took place, so whatever I could put on the radio for the officers to canvass, I did.
Approximately what time was Mr. Henry taken to a patient room?
I don't know.
Were you aware he was taken to a patient room?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what officers or what doctors saw him?
No, sir.
Were you present when Mr. Henry left the hospital?
No, sir.
Are you aware that he left the hospital?
Eventually, I assume he had to leave the hospital, but I don't know exactly what time he left the hospital.
When this vehicle first arrived, it was nighttime, correct?
Yes, sir.
What time did you get off?
6 a.m.
Was it still dark outside?
I don't recall.
Do you recall anybody or any persons arriving other than police officers?
It's a hospital. They remember them shutting down the ER because of the situation. So anybody would be routed through the main hospital entrance to in and out. But in terms of law enforcement staff, you have other officers, detectives, crime scene techs.
I'm primarily asking you, by the time you got off at 6 a.m., did you see any civilians, not police officers, any civilians arrive at the hospital?
I don't recall. If they did, they could have been rerouted to the front.
Okay, but to your knowledge, there were no civilians that came where you were, correct?
Inside the crime scene?
No, inside the hospital, where we saw Mr. Henry walking towards your desk. Words to that.
So like I explained, the hospital entrance, the ER was shut down because of the nature of the crime scene. So it's still a hospital. To anybody who Googles it, it's open. So any civilians could have walked up to the ER and were rerouted to the front, but I wasn't in charge of the crime scene. I have no idea if anybody passed the threshold of the crime scene taken to that particular
The
area.
crime scene was the Jeep?
The drive-through, so including the Jeep.
Okay. Was the crime scene also inside the hospital where Mr. Cortlen Henry was?
Yeah, the whole ER was shut down.
Okay, so in other words, no one was allowed in that area that we saw.
Unless they were needing emergency care, that would go to another room, but the ER was shut down.
So I'm real clear. Do you know the names of all, did you document the names of all the officers and detectives that responded?
No, I didn't.
So we're perfectly clear. Could you stand up? You didn't see this young man getting out of the Jeep at any time, correct?
No, sir.
Fair enough. Could I have one moment?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
Counsel, is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Officer, when you're speaking into your radio or speaking to dispatch, is that logged in any manner?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that called?
That's the central dispatch radio traffic. It's public record, so anybody can request it, but it's documented.
So everything you were saying or everything you communicated from what Mr. Henry told you would be documented in your dispatch log.
Yes, ma'am.
The crime scene log that counsel just referred to you as, were you charged? Was that one of your tasks that you were assigned?
No, ma'am.
In fact, you weren't assigned any duties, correct?
No, ma'am.
Your job began and ended with your detail and assisting the gentleman when he came in, Mr. Cortlen Henry.
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Counsel, thank you. Is this witness excused?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may step down. Thank you.